Alright, so yes, the title down here is correct. I did learn German playing Xbox. The title is correct. Anyway, a lot of people have been asking me recently, like how I learned each language. And like I made a couple of videos, I'm pretty sure like a while ago, like in each respective language explaining how I learned it. But I feel like most of the people that watch these videos are English speakers. So I'm gonna like remake each video and then I'm gonna explain how I learned each language in English this time. And like I'm doing this from memory, so like I don't remember exactly what I did. So if these videos differ from the videos that I made back then, I apologize because like I'm just going off of memory. But anyway, people seem to find the German story the most inspiring and like inspirational or whatever, and the craziest and hardest to believe. So I'll start off with this one. Alright, I forgot to add this part in when I was telling the original story, so I'm just gonna like flip this in between. But anyway, before I actually started like learning German, like seriously learning German, I remember like one of the main reasons that I started learning, this is gonna sound very trivial and very like I feel like most people won't understand this. I feel like most people would need more motivation. But I remember my friends and I, we used to play Call of Duty 2 like way before this, and we thought I don't know, like we used to find it funny to try and like imitate what like the soldiers would yell in the game. So like a lot of people find this funny and hard to believe too, but like my first German words weren't like hallo or like wie geht's dir? Like they both mean like hello, how are you respectively. Like my first words were the things that the German soldiers yelled in Call of Duty. So like my first words, and I couldn't pronounce them properly at the time, but we would try our best, and like it was just, I don't know, we just had a lot of fun. So my first words, and like my German friends found this very funny in Germany, were like ich werfe eine Granate, or like gib mir Deckung, Mann am Boden, stuff like that. Like ich werfe eine Granate means like I'm throwing a grenade, and like Mann am Boden, man down, gib mir Deckung, cover me, and stuff like that. Because like, that was the only German I was exposed to, just like what I was hearing yelled in Call of Duty. So my first German words were like war phrases. And then later on, I ended up learning like hello, how are you, my name is, I'm from Canada, blah blah blah. But yeah, I had to add that part in. So anyway, now back to the main video. Yes, I did learn German playing Xbox, at least the majority of it. So what I did for learning German is, this is back when I literally had no idea what I was doing with language learning. I had no clue. So what I did is I got some books. The German story, it's a story of failure and trying again and then failing again and giving up and blah blah. Anyway, so what I did, I started by, my aunt gave me these two German books that she used to learn German. And then so I started with these books. Remember, like I had no idea what I was doing. So I remember I started just like trying to read the vocab list, and I tried to like memorize all the words. And I thought that would work. I thought that's how people learn languages, but like that was obviously very wrong. So I tried that, and I didn't bother to use audio, which was another big mistake. I just tried to pronounce the words how I would pronounce them in English. So if I would actually try and speak to a German person, they would probably have no idea what I was saying. So I tried that. I tried learning all these words and stuff and like phrases. I didn't bother with grammar at the beginning. What else did I try to do? Just word lists and just applying English pronunciation to them. And I tried that for a while and it just didn't work. So I ended up giving up. And then I was kind of discouraged for a bit, if I remember correctly. Like, pretty sure I was around 15, if I remember correctly, when I started learning German for the first time. I was in grade 8. So I remember the principal at my school told me that like if you speak several languages, all subsequent languages will become easier. So I was like, okay, I already know French, well, at least a little bit, because like I was in French immersion. That's a story for another time. But I already know a bit of French, so why not learn Spanish? Because Spanish is more similar to French than German is. So I was like, okay, if I learn Spanish, then it'll be easier for me to learn German later on. So I ended up studying Spanish. I'm not going to get into this story. I'll make an entire video on this. But anyway, long story short, I ended up learning a bare amount of Spanish. And then when I felt comfortable in Spanish, I was like, okay, like now I have two languages. Well, three, including English. So now I have three languages. So now is a good time for me to try and learn German again, because like the principal said, like the more languages you speak, the easier subsequent languages become. So I was like, okay, like I'll try and learn German now. So the second time around, I made the same mistake. I remember I got out the same books again. I was like, okay, like just try and memorize as much as possible. Audio is not really important. Just try and memorize as much as possible. So I tried that, and it wasn't really working. I was getting discouraged. And then I cannot remember which Christmas this was, but for Christmas, I got Living Language German and Living Language Italian, and I mentioned Living Language Italian in my old video. It's the same book that I used for actively studying Italian this time. So I remember this time I had audio, And I didn't know at the time, but this was a very crucial factor. And this is probably one of the main reasons that I actually succeeded this time. So I went through living language German. I can't remember how often I did it, but I think I tried to do it like every night. So I would go through that book with the audio, and I tried all these really like crazy techniques, like all these crazy different methods, because like I heard all these different things, and like I wanted to like learn as fast as possible. So I remember I tried falling asleep with it playing, because I remember I read somewhere that if you sleep, you can learn a foreign language while you're sleeping. That obviously didn't work. Tried all these crazy different methods, and like it wasn't really working, but I was advancing a bit faster than I had the first time. And then so I remember I had an Xbox. Like at this time I had an Xbox, and I used to like the game a lot. So I used to play Xbox quite often. So I noticed that when I would play Call of Duty 2, and this is another crucial factor, like if I didn't have Call of Duty 2, then I probably never would have succeeded with German. And then this is going to make sense in a second. But anyway, I noticed that in Call of Duty 2, a lot of Europeans would play against me. So like after each game, I would like look at the people's gamer tags, and it would be like France or like Germany or Austria. So I was like, wait a minute, maybe I can message some of these people and we can like add each other, and then we can like game together, and like I can practice with them. So I remember one day I was playing, and then I played against some dude, and then afterwards I checked his profile. I said he was from Germany. I was like, oh, okay, no way. Let me try messaging this dude. So I messaged him in German. I tried my best. It was like a literal translation from English, if I still remember correctly. And he responded, and then we ended up adding each other. And then he had a couple other friends, and then we would all play together. And then so how it ended up working is they wanted to learn English. So they would speak to me in English, and then I would respond in German. So it was like a language exchange. And I'm not even gonna lie, like I used to game a lot back then, like a lot. So like I was playing like a couple hours a day. So like this is like daily German practice, so like hours on hours of German practice every day. So, but I remember we would game pretty often, and then I remember they also had a friend who couldn't speak English, and he couldn't really understand it either. So if I wanted to communicate with this guy, I had to speak German, and he would respond in German to like back to me. So I had to understand it. So it kind of forced me to learn. Like it was like an immersion. It was like an immersion in my basement. So instead of going to Germany, I just immersed myself in my basement. But yeah, like I would play quite often. I'm not really sure how my progress went, but I do remember like after 9 months, I felt pretty fluent. I don't have any videos of me speaking German back then, so I can't really look back and compare it to now, but I did feel pretty fluent. I remember I used to even think in German. Well, obviously when I was speaking to them or reading German news articles, like I would be thinking in German. And I thought that was really cool, because like that was kind of what made me want to learn foreign languages to begin with. I wanted to see what it felt like to think in a different language, and it was really cool to finally like reach that goal. But anyway, to go into more detail about what I would do, so I would come home from school, I would do homework if I had it or whatever, and then I would just go game. And then every night before I would go to bed, like I used to find it really hard to sleep back then, but like I would go to bed at like 11 o'clock, and then I wouldn't fall asleep until like 5 in the morning. That's if I fell asleep at all. Sometimes I just wouldn't sleep the whole night, and like it was kind of annoying, but I was like, you know what, like I can't sleep, so I just make use of my time. So every night I would try to sleep first, and if I couldn't fall asleep, then I would read German news articles. And then I would read the news articles, and then I would learn. Every time I didn't know a word, like I would go through the article, and then every time I didn't know a word, I would search it on wordreference.com, and then I would start again. And I would keep doing this until I completed the whole news article, and then I would go on to the next one. And like this helped because I was reading about interesting stuff. Like I wanted to see what was going on in the world, but I was just doing it through German, and I was learning a lot of vocabulary through this. And then so after reading all these articles, I would go back and game the next day, and then I would just like I would have new words to use. So like I would practice all the words I learned reading the news with the Germans, and then I would just keep repeating that process. And there was a podcast called German Class 101 or German Pod 101, I can't remember, but they make really good podcasts. Company is called like Innovative Languages or something. So like I would listen to like a podcast or two from them every night, and then that would also help. And then I would just, everything that I learned, I would just go and apply it. And then once I got to a higher level, I started watching like German TV shows. Like back then on iTunes, they had like a fair amount of German TV shows. They don't have them anymore. I tried to find them a little while ago and I couldn't find any of them. But back then they had quite a few. Like they had Die strengsten Eltern der Welt. It's like the world's strictest parents in German. So I used to watch that. I used to love that show. My favorite show, and I was really heartbroken when I found that it was fake. But I used to watch that show. I used to watch a lot of German shows. So pretty much to summarize it, like it was before I went to bed, I would just get a massive amount of input in, and then I would even like write German sometimes, because like I found that I would remember it better if I wrote it out. So I would write it sometimes, get a massive amount of input from the podcasts, from the book, from the living language book, and the news articles. So I was exposed to a lot of like written German, and then I would just go and apply it. And then I just kept repeating this process, repeating this process, repeating this process. And then, like I was saying, like after about 9 months, I felt pretty fluent. So that was like the beginning of the story with German. So then later on, I slowly stopped studying it. Like I never, like I would still listen to German music and everything, but I didn't really speak German that often. After a while, I kind of stopped, and I stopped reading the news in German. It just kind of just like went down after a bit. And then I noticed my level started to drop a bit, and I was kind of worried about it. And I started like doing like different languages. Like I ended up doing Chinese. So like I remember it got to a point where I felt like the Chinese had like overwritten the German in my mind. So like I couldn't really speak German anymore, and I was finding it really hard to like understand it and everything. But I wasn't really interested anymore. I was more interested in Chinese. So I stuck with Chinese for a bit. And then back in 2014, if I remember correctly, I discovered a bunch of language meetups. So I started going to all these different meetups and stuff. So all of a sudden, like I had an opportunity to practice them more often. So I had an opportunity to practice German again. And then I remember I had a German friend, and then we hung out one day, and then we would only speak in German. So I was trying really hard to speak German. I was really struggling, and I was really like almost ashamed, I guess is the correct word, because I was like, I put so much time into this. I used to be so good. I was like almost like fluent or whatever, and then now it's like I'm struggling so much, and I have to like use English words and everything, and like all this work for nothing kind of thing. And then I just tried to push through it, just tried to keep pushing through it, and I just tried to keep speaking or whatever. And my friend was really patient. And then I remember I was getting more input and stuff, and obviously I was going to the language meetup, so I was practicing more often. And I remember one day, I'm trying to remember where this was, like my friend and I, we went to, I don't know, was it Starbucks or something? And then I remember talking again, and then we were like telling stories. And then I remember, I didn't notice right away, but like it was like my German had gone from like I was struggling to find words to all of a sudden I was just speaking fluently. And then I remember like leaving and going home that day, and I was like, wow. Like what happened? Like a couple weeks, or I can't remember what the time span was. Like a couple weeks or months ago, I was struggling a lot, and then it felt like it was overnight. It felt like the day before I was struggling, and then boom, like all of a sudden I could just speak, and then I was just speaking. I didn't have to think about what I was saying anymore. It was just like it was just flowing, and it sounded more correct, and like I felt good. I was like, wow, like my German went from garbage to like fluent. Everybody has a different definition of fluency, but like my German went from garbage to fluent like overnight. So it was like all the input I was getting in, and like all the speaking and everything, it's like everything just clicked and it all just made sense, and then I could speak properly, and then so I felt good. And then I feel like my German now is like way better than it was back then, because I feel like I can say more now. I feel like my pronunciation has improved and stuff, so I feel like it's better. And then like that kind of carries into today. So I don't think there's been really any drastic changes from 2014 and now. Like obviously I still go out and try and practice it as often as possible. I feel like it's kind of gone down a bit now, because like I have so many different languages that I have to like maintain now, so I can't like allocate as much time to German specifically now. So I feel like it's gone down a bit, but that carries into today, that carries over to today. So like recently I struggled a bit. Like I had to think of a couple words and stuff, and like there's some things that like I just didn't know how to say. But I forgot. I ended up actually going to Germany, and then the weird thing I found is like when I'm here in Canada and like I find a German person, I didn't really have any problem speaking with them. Like it was pretty easy. I could understand them, they could understand me. But when I was actually in Germany, I don't know what changed. Like I don't know if it was like a mental thing, or like this is like a real thing. I don't know if other people experience this too, but like when I was actually in Germany and I was surrounded by German, it was harder. It was weird because like, it was the exact same speed that I was hearing it spoken at in Canada, but now I'm just in Germany. But like it was harder for me to understand in Germany. And I also noticed like if somebody was speaking to me directly in German, I could understand like, I don't know, like in a normal conversation like 95% or so. But then if there's like a third person in the group, and then they turn to that person and they start talking to that person at the exact same speed about the exact same thing that we were talking about, then my comprehension goes from like 95% to like maybe 65%. And like I didn't really understand that. I asked a couple people, they said like maybe it's that they're speaking faster or something, but like it sounded like it was the same speed, but it's like I don't know, like when they turn to that person, like my comprehension just drops. And I noticed that in like all the languages I speak, well obviously except English because it's my like native language, but anyway, yeah. So like the trip to Germany was interesting. Like for the first couple days I felt like it was like an overload. Like the very first day was okay, but then like the subsequent days it was like an overload. It was just like so much German, I couldn't speak. I was struggling so much. So I remember a lot of the time I was just quiet, and like my friends kept asking me if I could understand or not, but I was like yes I understand, but it's just like it's such an overload. It's like it's just hard to get the German to come out. And a weird thing I noticed is like when I would speak German, sometimes Chinese words, like Mandarin words, would try to like creep in, which I found weird because German and Mandarin are so different. But the trip was fun. I posted a video, like a before and after video of my German before and after Germany. So like if you guys want to go, I'll probably post a link in the description. If you guys want to watch that, go ahead. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. After that, there's like no other major milestones in German. But like that is my German story. Like I started once, I completely messed up because I didn't know what I was doing. I stopped. The principal told me to like learn different languages because it makes subsequent language easier. So I learned Spanish, and then I went back to German, and then a bunch of weird coincidences pretty much like made me do it correctly that time, which led me to like fluency, because everyone has a different definition, as I mentioned before, and then ended up getting bad because of Chinese, and then I ended up going back into it and then getting to the levels that I'm at now. So that is my story of German, like learning German on Xbox. Anyway, yeah, thank you for watching.